Welcome, Dennis Miners. It's awesome to get some time to talk to you. I wish we were hanging out in the gallery doing this together in the same space. But this is just as special to get one-on-one time with you and catch up.
A little technical magic here.
Little technical magic across the waves of greater Portland here. I'm trying to think our history briefly. I mean, I've known you for, gosh, quite a while. I want to say probably at least almost 10 years now that, and you've been coming in the gallery. I've gotten to do some projects with you and shown your work a few times over the years. And prior to this year, most recently, and I was just thinking about this because Leslie was helping you get set up as the Clay and Life project, which is so cool to include you guys in, and thinking of how long of a career you've had in ceramics, and really, both of you, how long your art careers have been. And it's a rare and special thing.
I have been so lucky. I mean, to be able to continue to do this, to have my body holding up.
Yeah,
that's just amazing, because almost everybody else I know has back trouble or wrist trouble, and I don't. And I've taken some measures to prevent that, but God, like one of the reasons that Leslie got out of it is she had carpal tunnel. She just couldn't wedge clay anymore.
Oh,
couldn't get out.
Well, I'm grateful that you guys still both get to be creative and have that time. I mean, that's phenomenal that even if she's not in clay right now, that it's still gets to, as you put it earlier, you get to wake up each day and do what you love, do what you want. What am I going to do? What am I going to do today? It's a
Can't
great place to be.
Can't wait to get into there.
Yeah.
Get into the studio.
That's
God,
awesome.
That's so great. I mean, how many people can't wait to get to work?
Right? I mean, that's a special place. So I know, I know what I love asking, and I know what people love to learn more about, especially those that don't know you super well. And even me, I don't know the origin story of like how you got to this, how you got into clay, what got, what turned you on to it, or art, and what got you going, and how'd you get the clay bug?
Well, I was an art major in college at Washington State, and not having a very good time. I was doing graphic design, and that didn't fit, and I was trying to be a painter, and that didn't fit, and I couldn't really see all that great. So being a photographer didn't really work all that well. And my roommate was an interior design major, and he took a ceramics class as a requirement, I think. And he was bringing home these strange little objects. And I said, well, what are those? And he said, well, this is ceramics. I'm taking a ceramics class. I said, oh yeah, wow, cool. So he told me where the class was, and which was not in the art building. It was in another building way across campus in the
Why
basement.
is that? I think they like hide the ceramics from people.
That was exactly it. The rest of the art department didn't want to have ceramics in the art department. But somehow Don Annawalt, who was the guy that founded that department, got it in there. And I went down into the basement of I think it was the steam plant. And here were all these people working in there, and there was laughter and talking, as opposed to all, the painting classes and the drawing classes where everybody was sitting there grimly doing what they were doing. And I walked into the throwing room, and there was a beautiful young woman sitting there throwing, and she looked up and said, hi. And I said, where do I sign up? and it took, the classes were popular, and it took another year, I think. Well, actually, it was more than that, because I went in the military in the meantime. When I came back,
you took time off from school to do that? You went into the military?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, just clarifying.
I didn't have any choice in that matter. That was
drafted.
Well,
sorry.
I was drafted on Monday, and I got into the reserves on the previous Saturday.
Wow.
I think strings were pulled, but I've never known.
Okay. Because reserves, forgive the younger generation in me of not knowing, but reserves meant you were prepared to go But on reserve, is that literally like what, or like your
Well,
training in the States, or?
The National Guard is the militia.
Okay.
I mean, when you hear the word militia referred to these white terrorist gangs, they're not militia. That's just the word they're using.
Yeah.
They're terrorists.
Yeah.
The militia refers to the National Guard.
Okay.
And those are people that are there in case there's a flood or a natural disaster,
Yep.
or civil insurrection. They're there to, to do the government's job.
Sure.
So anyway, I did that.
Yeah.
I did that for 6 years, and
Okay.
but when I came back from my active duty, I got into a ceramics class, and Remus Visgerda was my first teacher. And I didn't. And after that experience with him, I didn't see him for almost 50 years until he came for some event in Portland, because he and Tom Orr are really good friends.
Yeah, friends. Yeah.
And I got to talk to him, and it was really fun. We didn't really get along when I was a know-it-all, in those days.
Yeah.
And still am probably, but
you've earned it now, we can say, with age.
Yeah, now that I actually
I
do
was
know
too
it all.
at 19, and I think I pissed a lot of people off. But the older I get, people seem to give me more grace on that.
Well, almost everybody is between 12 and 20. That's the nature of being human. But yeah, when I first got into clay, that was what I was going to do. And the next time I saw my parents, I said, well, this is, I'm going to be a potter. And my parents immediately freaked out, and they were both sure that I was going to die of starvation. But here I am. I mean, that didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've said to other people, and I think wrote down, was when I first started working with clay, I felt like I'd come home. Mm-hmm. And all those years of learning to be a potter and learning about materials and trying to learn to throw and trying to, just trying to make stuff. And then trying to make stuff that could be maybe considered art, which I don't get to decide, but there was always something missing. Okay. And I never knew what it was. I mean, I loved forming, I loved form itself, I loved materials, and I loved glazes and glazing and firing especially. I mean, everybody in clay loves firing, I think. But there was always something missing. And it wasn't until I came back to Portland. We lived in Southern Oregon for almost 20 years. And I came back to Portland thinking I would build another gas-fired kiln. And that was just too much of a hassle. So I said, okay, I wanted to convert to Cone 6. I wanted to lower the carbon footprint of my studio practice. Mm-hmm. Here's my chance. I will start firing with an electric kiln. I had 2 old electric kilns that are relics, really. And I'm going to reformulate my glazes for Cone 6 and for Cone 6 oxidation, mm-hmm. and start firing that way. And a couple of years ago, when Insika happened in Portland, you facilitated me chairing a forum. I don't even know what you mm-hmm. call it. At Insika.
What was that? It was like a process room, maybe, or
something.
We
like
were like
that.
Demoing and.
Yeah. It was a discussion group.
Topical discussion, maybe.
And
might have been that. Yeah, might have been what that one was called.
And that was, I titled that "Ceramics in the Time of Climate Change." And I got to know a physicist, and asked him to help me with facts, so that I just wouldn't be up there spouting my opinions, because who needs more of that? Mm-hmm. And he said, okay, give me your fuel usage when you were firing with propane out in the mountains.
Yeah.
And give me your electric usage now that you're firing with an electric kiln in the city of Portland. And he said, which totally amazed me, is that my carbon footprint is 1/7 now what it was then when I was firing with fuel out in the mountains. Wow. So I was elated. I mean,
That's phenomenal. Yeah, like circa turn of the century, I remember the information I had was like, oh, you're saving like a third or 30%, but that's phenomenal if it's even that higher. I had no idea.
I didn't either. I mean, I was over the moon about it, really.
Yeah.
So I reformulated all my glazes and started making pots and learning how to use them. And somewhere in there, the drawings that had been happening a little bit when I was firing and reduction came back in. And I began to find out about what Mishima actually is.
Yeah.
And one of the things that happens in Mishima is after you've incised those lines into that wet clay and laid that dark slip into those lines, which is the way I work.
Yeah.
Let everything dry, and you come back and you clean it off and you reveal the lines. Well, one day there was a little area of a canine, a hind leg, where the excess didn't come off quite right. And I realized, oh, there's something that I can use. And so that led to starting to paint. And when the drawings led to the painting, and I realized this is what I've been missing. This is what was missing for almost 50 years in my life, in my work. Here it is. Because I started drawing. I drew all during my childhood. And and I've drawn on paper all those years. And it was just thrilling when I realized that. And with each drawing I would do, it would lead to another one. And I started drawing animals, of course. Started with a little bird, just a little generic bird. And then when we lived in the Applegate, I lived next door to a horse that I drew all the time. And the horse was on pots and on paper. And I was painting horses at that time, a little bit on pots. Actually, I think there might be one behind me up there somewhere. But when for instance, I started drawing a rabbit, and then I thought, well, what's a rabbit's life like? What's a rabbit afraid of, for instance? And the rabbit is afraid of its predator, which would be a fox or a wolf or something like that. So I could draw a wolf with the rabbit, and then there's a story.
Yeah.
And so I did that for a while, and it gradually expanded, and it added a mountain lion, and added a bear, and added a bird, added an owl, for instance, and because owls prey on rabbits. And at some point I realized that the story had led me to thinking about animal life, of which we're animals. And somehow I heard about the photo arc maybe a year and a half ago. And the photo arc is a project that was started and is underway by a wildlife photographer named Joel Sartori, who's very famous as a wildlife photographer. He's anybody who looks at photographs of animals has seen his photographs at some point. Well, he discovered, or began to be aware of, the fact that a lot of the populations of animals were in decline maybe 15 or 20 years ago. And so he said, I'm going to forget all this commercial stuff I'm doing, and I'm just going to start photographing animals that are in decline. And he was also doing a lot of research and talking to wildlife biologists, and they were telling him that what this looks like is something that's named the sixth extinction, the anthropogenic extinction event, which means it's a human-caused extinction event where a lot of animals are being literally driven off the earth by us. There's predation, there's habitat destruction, there's pollution, pesticides, which are huge, and climate change, which is the biggest thing, maybe the biggest thing. So since then, he's been photographing critters as fast as he can. And I just was overwhelmed by it. I thought, what a heroic, incredible thing to do. And then I started to think, well, he's publishing books and these photographs are available in digital form. Extinction is forever. And the books aren't going to last very long, a century or two.
Yeah, yeah.
Digital, who knows? It
requires something up there. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it might last a century or two as well, but given what we're doing, given what's going on, I do not see that digital is going to last very long. So the books are gone, and if the digital is gone and the animals are gone, then there's just this emptiness. But well-fired ceramic is going to be around a long time.
And back to the original archive.
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. It is.
Yeah.
It's the origin of the art world, after the cave art. I don't know if people were making ceramics when cave art was being done or not, but they probably were, but those pots are probably gone. They couldn't get them. They couldn't get them.
Couldn't get them hot enough in the open fire.
So I thought to myself, well, I can do portraits of these critters, and on ceramic, and they're going to be here a long time. So that's the foundation of the water bottle Mishima ark.
Okay.
And so I started drawing, and I mean, you helped me make those molds in January or December or January, whenever it was.
Yeah.
And then I started casting bottles and started doing drawings, and I was making a Mishima ark, and I was just, this is pretty cool. And I started out with the animals I was already using, and then I started researching more animals, and I was drawing every day, all day long, every day. And at the end of 6 months or so, I'd done, at that time, about 50 drawings, with the intention of having it be 100. And I was exhausted, and I wasn't prepared for how it would affect me emotionally to draw, to bring these critters to life on the surface of these pots every day, knowing that those critters, a lot of them, like for instance, the white rhinoceros, is done for. Polar bears almost certainly are done for. A lot of other critters. But when, for instance, researching endangered moths, and I read a couple of articles by people who study moths that say all the moths are endangered. All of them. The population of all the moths, all the butterflies are endangered. And then when I read this article, that it gives me cold chills right now just to think about it, that said that all insects are endangered. And if the insects go, I mean, E.O. Wilson, who is that biologist, he said, if the insects go, so does everything else. And they're going because of us. And it's because of pesticides, it's because of habitat destruction, it's because of climate change, mostly. So at the end of 5 months of every day being immersed in that, I was about the most depressed human being on earth. And at the same time, COVID had hit.
Yeah.
And so
to cheer us up.
Yeah. So and the murder hornet had come, and was found up by Blaine, Washington. And then George Floyd was murdered, and all this stuff. Going back to my students all those years ago that I loved so much, and I have no idea what happened to them. All that was up, but I realized that what I was doing, to circle back to the Mishima ark, was not an ark. There's no way. I had done 50 drawings. I was exhausted, and hundreds of thousands of animals are disappearing. This is a raft. And it made me laugh.
Yeah.
I realized, it's humiliating, but at the same time, it was really funny. And so I thought, oh, Mishima raft. Well, that sounds good. I like it.
That's great. It frames it, because if you're, the arc would be a lifetime of
Yeah.
I don't mean it depressing, but a depressing painting, right? Holy
Oh
cow.
God, yeah. Oh God, yeah. It'd be
Yeah,
horrible. I mean, if I were 35 years old and
sure. We
embarking
could
on this,
pivot and that'd be your your
I
life's
could,
work.
yeah, I could think, well, yeah, I could. It wouldn't be it'd be a boat maybe, but it wouldn't be an ark.
Yeah,
But I don't think I would have the stamina to do it. I couldn't
it's a
do
lot.
it that.
Well, and aside from, I mean, what I'm hearing, which I never thought of until you brought this up, is aside from the obvious, the physical stamina part, the emotional drain, right?
Yeah, that's
You're through motion, literally painting, and you're creating, you're acknowledging a deeper understanding of what's happening around you in a very
yeah.
physical,
It,
tangible way, which is depressing, but on a lot of layers.
it's a discovery that I didn't expect to make, and
Yeah.
definitely did not want to make. But going back to what led me to this
Hmm.
discovery is being in process and um, being led by process.
Yeah.
Discovery is what it's all about, and mistakes, but just being aware. I mean, it's so easy to not be aware.
I agree, especially those, we forget that you nailed it, right? Process drives discovery, and if you are so focused on the outcome of something, you're
Exactly.
missing all these opportunities in the process to go, wait a minute, what happened over there? Where do we go? Yeah,
Exactly. That is exactly, and that's what we all do.
yeah.
I think.
So many of us. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I think we all do, because we're all focused on outcomes to a certain extent.
Yeah, we have an expectation. We
Mhm.
start something with an expectation.
We're working towards it, and expectations are the worst thing in the world. For somebody like me,
Yeah,
that pin everything on hope and leave expectation out of it, because expectation is like building a wall around process. Because
hmm,
like when I was I guess I was in my 30s, and I was writing a little blurb for a show in, I think, Baltimore, and this little card that I was going to hand out to everybody, and 12-year-old girls took them all. They were in competitions, they're running around the show taking them all.
oh God, you're collecting them, like, see who can have the most cards at the end of the day, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But one of the things I wrote down was, um, sometimes I feel like a bystander in the process because what happens surprises me so much.
Hmm.
And writing that line down, when I started that line, I wasn't expecting to write that line. And it really opened my eyes to the fact that I'm not in charge.
Yeah,
I'm a channeler. This is where woo-woo comes into all this.
yeah,
I'm channeling energy from somewhere else, and I don't know where that is. And if I have expectations and I'm pin my everything on outcomes,
yep,
then I shut the door on that energy, the
yeah,
muse. Poets call it the muse.
yeah.
Um, Golfers talk about that kind of stuff,
Hmm.
and of all people, not to be,
Not to stereotype those golfer types,
yeah,
but
yeah. Well, I
I
used
know
to
what you
play.
mean, because there's an ultimate moment of focus, right? And people are like,
Mhm.
how do you hit that little ball so far and got it in a tiny hole, and or whatever, like that level of skill. But I think they're it's the same thing. They're tapping into something,
Well,
the Zen moment, right?
it comes from somewhere else.
Yeah,
And maybe
agreed.
it's coming from inside us, but nobody knows. Um,
Yeah.
a friend of mine is an advertising executive and very famous, and he got an award at this uh, national advertising conference in New York, and he said, "Oh God, I got to go back to this stupid conference and find out." Well, it's kind of the preeminent thing in the whole world, and
Hmm.
they were giving him this award, and they handed him this little piece of paper, and he said thanks, and he took it out of the frame and he tore it in two. He said, "I only get credit for half of this.
Oh,
The other half comes from I don't know where. It comes to me.
yeah.
It's not coming from me." And of course, he shocked the conference, and that's why he
Yeah,
was
yeah. That's why he's great. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's why he was so great. And then everybody, he said he could just look around the room and he realized that, oh yeah, but there were still some people who are sitting there with their arms crossed. They didn't get it,
Sure.
But the people who are really creative or allowing that energy to come totally understood what he was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. When he told me that story, I thought, God, it comes from everywhere. I mean, I've even heard it from people who hang doors. Some days you put those doors in there and, they open the door and it stays right where you want it. Other days you put that door in there and it opens up and then it slams closed by itself. And you got to redo it, Yeah.
Yeah, I've had some experiences like that, and I find that meaning the feeling like you're channeling something, and then I find as I've gotten older, and I don't create as frequently because I administrate so many things, but I get in studio, I'm chasing that. I'm chasing that, trying to find that I use the word Zen, like trying to find that Zen moment where the expectation is lost and something else is just, whatever's happening with the hands is happening, and you're just feeling the material and what things coming through you, and it's something
you're dancing.
Yeah.
When Leslie and I took ballroom dance classes when we were in our 30s, and when you first take a ballroom dance, there are specific steps, and the teacher has you, little wooden soldiers, doing these steps, and then she turns the music on, and then you're out there, and every class is the same, people out there, little wooden soldiers going back.
I'm sure really stiff and
then
mechanized.
After you've practiced for a while and you get the steps kind of figured out, then you forget that you're taking those steps. And it's a partnership. Ballroom dance is you're dancing with a partner, and it's so much like art making. You fly. I mean, literally, it's like flying, and it's just so much fun. I wish we had not stopped doing it, but when we moved to the mountains, it was too hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all the same. And whether you're a dancer, a sculptor, a musician, filmmaker, it's all the same stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You're always inviting that the muse, that I call it actually dark energy. I'm a prism for dark energy.
Mm-hmm.
And people say, well, that sounds pretty creepy. And but dark
Don't
energy,
worry, good things come from.
well, dark energy is most of what is.
Yeah.
The physicists say.
Yeah.
They just can't measure it. They can't detect it. But
sure, and on the surface, the word dark just seems like it's bad, right?
It's scary.
Like by nature, we say that dark is not, it's quantified as a negative thing.
Yeah.
Well, so we got the Mishima raft. And I think it's phenomenal, and I'm really again excited to be working with you with the having your work at the Canton Art Museum. You might have already said this, but so after their invitation to show, was that kind of simultaneous to discovering kind of the mission with what initially started out as the ark but turned to the raft, or were you already kind of in that place with and forgive me because I forgot the photographer's name that you mentioned that was inspiring, that was doing the photo art project.
Joel Sartori.
Joel. So were you already kind of getting there, and then having the venue of the museum allowed you to really run with it, or were you, or I'm saying run with it. Let me rephrase this. Were you already thinking of that body of work, or once the invitation to show with them came to be, then you were thinking, I would like to make a body of work? Did one come before the other? I guess maybe what I'm asking.
I'm not exactly sure.
Okay. Yeah, because I felt like it was pretty close in timing. Yeah.
It all came together.
Yeah.
About the same time. I think what really got me was when the summer before last, we eat lunch outside almost every day in the summertime. there weren't any yellow jackets. And I already had heard that the planet is losing between 2 and 3% of the mass of insects per year. And that's been going on for years. And I've noticed that there just weren't bugs around. Mm-hmm. And it just totally creeps me out. But to realize that was directly as in right there in my backyard, it just opened my eyes to the fact that there were no yellow jackets. And talking to our neighbors and talking to friends, they said, yeah, I saw a yellow jacket the other day, Whereas it used to be 20 years ago, you eat outside, it was like warfare.
yeah, totally.
Who was going to get the most food? And that's when I started to think about, I'm sure I was aware of Joel Sartori, and maybe I'd even seen some of the photo arc at that point. Somewhere around there, it was when it occurred to me that the photographs and the books and the digital and all that kind of stuff, that's very transitory. That's like a blink of an eye. It's going to be gone. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I was already aware of the fact that we're, when I was a little kid, my brother and I were sitting out in the pea field, and I grew up on a farm, and a spray plane came over and sprayed us. And we didn't think anything about it until like 20 minutes later, all these cars started pulling up in front of the house, and all these people came running out there, and with my mother, who was crying and terrified, and they grabbed us and took us into the house and put us in the bathtub and scrubbed us down. I've known since then that pesticides were really, really a problem for critters. It made growing peas on our farm possible, because what they're spraying for was a caterpillar that rolls up. It's green, and it rolls up when it's threatened, exactly the same size as a pea. And when the pea combine comes along, and I drove pea combine when I was in my teens, those worms go through the viner, and they go to the cannery, and they go into the little package that we buy at the store. And one doesn't know that they're a worm until they come out and they're being cooked, and then they unroll. So, well, you can't grow peas commercially if you're going to have worms in them. So the spray happened. And from the time I was a little kid until I was in college, I became a bird watcher. After having hunted birds and shot a lot of birds, I realized that was really stupid when I was about 15, maybe. But I became aware of the fact that the birds that I'd seen when I was a little kid were scarce. That was happening. That's 50 some years ago now. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then to roll it forward, when I lived in Selwood, I had this beautiful apple tree that was every spring would be full of bees when it bloomed. And one year there weren't any bees in it. And the next year there weren't any bees in it either. And then I started hearing about colony collapse disease, and well, what's up with that? And then to roll it forward to finding out about the photo arc, and discovering that when I drive my car down the road for an hour in the summertime, used to be the front of the car would be plastered with bugs. Now you can drive all day and there won't be any bugs in the front of your car.
That's true. That's a really good, I never thought of that. I drove a month or so ago to visit my aunt in Austin. I didn't want to fly for obvious reasons, and I drove. My car is clean. Mm-hmm. From Portland to Texas and back. Mm-hmm. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, it's so easy to not see what isn't there to see.
Right. Yeah, the absence of something. Yeah.
So that was another thing that was a motivation for making this show, is so that people could see it. It's like what Leslie's doing with the Soulbox project. She started after this shooting in Las Vegas, and
Mm-hmm.
then discovered that somewhere over 100 people a day are shot in this country.
Yeah.
Every day. And you know, you hear that, well, 100 people a day, and that just rolls right off your tongue, you know, and it's
Sure,
kind
you
of
don't
forgotten.
even think, it's sad that that doesn't seem like, oh, okay.
Well,
Right?
it's like saying now with COVID, a 250,000 people have been killed by COVID in the last 7 months. You know, it rolls right off your tongue. But when there's an incredible project in Washington D.C. right now.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't remember the name of the woman. She's just a spectacular project. But anyway, Leslie said, I'm going to make a box for everybody that's shot, and I'm going to get other people to do it. And now that project is spread all over the country, and there are people from, you know, coast to coast making them and taking part. And if it weren't for COVID, we would have gone to Washington D.C. in October.
That's that same thing of making that visible, right? You know, because again, just saying the word 100 people a day get shot, or saying there's this many deaths for this reason, or not seeing the bugs on the front of your grill of your car, that again, in absence, we don't see. So making something visible is giving it a voice, the absence a voice in a way.
And not noticing the birds that aren't there anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you remember when you could go into the grocery store and buy smelt for 19 cents a pound.
I don't.
Yeah, that happened. They were wiped out before, when you were still a little kid. But we used to go out to the Sandy River, and you could literally stand there in the Sandy and catch them with your hands and put them into buckets and bring them home and clean them and have fish for the whole winter.
Wow.
And those runs are basically gone. I mean, I don't know if there are any smelt here now.
Yeah, I didn't even, I was like, I don't know. I don't even see them in the grocery store. Any. Yeah.
And I remember when that happened, thinking about my father talking about the birds that he saw when he was a kid. Because I grew up in the house where he grew up on that farm. And we had a lot of birds. I mean, and he used to talk about whippoorwills being there, or no, bobwhites that were there. And he could make the sound that a bobwhite made. And he said, I haven't heard that since I was a kid, because they've been gone. And I thought, you know, the more I thought about, well, when his father came, when his grandfather came, he was the first one to change that land from what it had been for millennia into agricultural land.
Yeah.
And all those critters that lived there are gone. Or not all of them, but they you know, a lot of them are gone.
Yeah, he's changed
So
environment
now when we hear about rainforest land being converted from rainforest to cattle ranches, or palm oil, which is the reason, you know, all those critters, you know, goodbye.
Yeah, goodbye, exactly.
So, you know, researching stuff for this Mishima raft, animal after animal, especially primates.
Yeah.
And they're so beautiful, and they're so fun to draw. And I really tried to accurately portray them and not let my attitude into those portraits, and realized that's totally impossible. What I didn't want to do is make them cartoony at all, which is really easy to do, and especially drawing in clay, because you have to be more simple drawing in clay than you are drawing on paper.
Well, handling all of the bottles and photographing them, I felt like all the characters had a soul or a gaze.
Oh, good.
Like in a way that I was affected. Like I wanted to look. I looked it in the eyes, like it was an acknowledgement of something. And then, you know, as I'm passing them to the photographer, then I'm reading them, and there was this sort of acknowledgement. So
good, because
so there was a process to just photographing them and the impact that had on myself, and experience.
Good. That's excellent, because I wanted them to be a little bit like the photographs on wanted posters. You know, a little bit like mugshots.
Yeah. That's what I thought. Exactly. That's where I went. Like missing, right? Almost like a milk carton kind of thing. You know,
Oh, I
this
hadn't
child
thought.
is
Yeah,
missing,
yeah,
but
exactly that.
this animal, you know, in 10 years is going to be missing. You know,
Yeah.
or 10, or I don't know the right amount of years, but you know.
Well, yeah, yes. Some of
Yeah.
them it's now. Some of it's 10
Yeah.
years.
Exactly.
Some of it's
Yeah.
100 years. But the rate they're going.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear you say that, because that's what I wanted people to see. And I don't know if, you know, if it's having all those portraits together, I don't know if that's going to work, because it takes some time.
Yes.
For each.
Yeah, and
Each
I had the
model.
luck, like I do with so much artwork that we handled, when the physicality from it, you know, taking something out of a box, looking at it, like, you know, there's this different sort of the physicality of it, acknowledgement of it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I would imagine those that I'll get to, and I'm sure the museum will have some, you know, document kind of even in the form of video, but just even a scan across things. I think hopefully we'll have a, you know, a similar deep impact. I mean, I think
Well, to a certain extent,
it's there. Yeah.
Yeah. But where I was with, maybe I mentioned this before, but to you know, I do the sketch, then I do the drawing, I clean it, and then I start painting, and that's when that portrait emerges. It's almost like watching a photograph emerge in the darkroom.
Sure, it comes
You know,
out. Yeah.
there's that face looking right at me, and I'm working on it all day long, and sometimes the next day I'm still working on that face looking at me. It took a toll.
Well, yeah, when you were referring, or much earlier when you said, yeah, the depressing or the taking away from, I totally acknowledging my short, you know, time with each piece, handling them, and that having an impact. I can imagine, you know, living with that face for a day, going, "Ah,"
And
you're
then the
saying
next day,
goodbye to something, you know, you're kind of
yeah,
saying, you
yeah,
know, it's a mourning, the mourning
yeah,
a loss there.
yeah. There's a lot of grief
Gosh.
involved. And then
Yeah.
the next day there's another animal, and the
Yeah.
next day there's another animal, and it
Yeah.
stretches on into. I mean, I can imagine how Joel Sartori feels.
Whew.
I mean,
Yeah.
he's done over 15,000 portraits. The last I heard, and that was a long time ago, at
Yeah.
least a year ago. He's living with it all that because he's photographing live critters.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're in the room with them. He tried to photograph in the wild, and he realized it was too slow. He couldn't do it. He had to. What was I going to say? There was something that slipped away.
Oh, that's okay. Do you know offhand, and I'm sorry that I didn't take a note on this earlier, how long the show runs at Canton? I don't have my notes in front of me. I'm at the house.
So I think till the end of February or something like that.
Okay, so we're going up. Yeah, we're going up next week, going up in November and through February. Great.
Yeah, it's up now. I know what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
When I was drawing those portraits, I realized I wanted to expand them, and I wanted to have more than one animal on a piece.
Yeah.
So that's what led me to the other pieces, and I
got to the larger bottle forms or vase forms.
Yeah. And that's also what got me to say, okay, I've got to stop this raft thing. You know, I've got to say, okay, it's only this big. I really need to move on to other pieces. And the first piece I wanted to make was that elephant piece. But I wanted that to be really confrontational. I went as confrontational as I could make it.
Yeah. No, it is. It's coming right.
I wanted that whole elephant on there, and that was cool. And it caused me to want to put the whole animal on
on a big piece.
Yeah.
No, that's a great piece.
Yeah, thank you. Even coyotes, which are doing fine, apparently. They seem to be dealing with our craziness,
adapting in a different way.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm pretty sure I saw one walking down the street the other day, not too far from the house, actually.
Yeah, probably.
It was either a fox or a coyote, but I don't recall which. Or I'm not unable to identify, I guess.
I doubt that it was a fox. I don't think foxes are doing all that great.
Okay, yeah, my gut was thinking coyote. Yeah.
Was it tall?
No, it was pretty lanky. It was kind of like a starving, to be honest. It was just kind of probably looking for some garbage cans. I mean, that's why I think they're making it. I feel like they're kind of a scavenger, so they can
looking for cats.
Oh, yeah, that looking for someone to let their cat out. Oh boy.
Yeah, and they know which house has cats.
Yeah.
They visit those houses. But we don't have coyotes in the yard now that after our cat died. We don't have coyotes around here anymore.
I don't have a reason to come around.
Yeah, they're not interested in the dog. He would be too much of a fight, so they're not.
Yeah, too much effort. Well, Dennis, this has been phenomenal. I really appreciate all your generosity with your time today and sharing all this.
Well, thank you.
And it's been a real deep dive and insight into the work, and learning more about some of the what I think was already there, but the clear motivation of why. And now I really appreciate knowing why it's a raft and not an ark. For your own sanity and safety and health. Yeah,
it was such a relief. I mean, like I say, at the same time, it was humiliating. It was such a relief to, it's such a joke on myself. I was being so grandiose about the whole thing, and realized, oh, I'm just this dumb guy.
Gosh,
I'm just one little guy.
Yeah, but that's a good reality, and you'll touch many people that'll see it. I mean, that's the beautiful thing. That's what I hope. We can help spread
so.
that.
I hope so,
and all the hard work you've done.
I hope that 1,000 years from now, some of these bottles are still in one piece, and people can look at them and say, "Oh, this is a silky sulfaca."
Sure.
What a beautiful.
What is that make-believe animal that somebody did 200? Don't tease them.
It looks like something from outer space. I mean,
yeah.
And that little critter's forest is being removed.
Yeah.
And of course, it's being hunted because it's so beautiful. But,
agreed. Well, awesome. Well, we should wrap up. Again, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to continuing to share the work at the Canton and continue to keep working with you and promoting what you're doing. It's a real honor to get to work with you.
Thank you. And thanks for making all this possible. I really appreciate all the incredible work that you've done.
Thank you. My pleasure. My honor. Yeah. All right, Dennis, we'll talk soon. I hope to see you soon. Be safe. Be well.
Yep. You be well too. Stay well.
All right, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.